All right, hello and welcome back to my random YouTube channel. This is a video about my 2020 WRX STI Limited. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the content we've done in the past. I'm going to try and keep this video kind of short, but give you guys an update on what I've done with the car recently. So, short history. Bought this car. Was basically new. It had 2,000 miles on it. Immediately started doing some pretty heavy modifications. We put an FP green turbocharger in it, ID 1700 injectors, ETS V2 header, a whole bunch of stuff, flex fuel, and had it tuned by Tailored Tuning. And if I remember right, it made 551 with the FP green, and it was an excellent street turbo. And 500 horsepower is nothing to sneeze at, especially in one of these all-wheel drive cars. It's really fun for about a week. So in the search for more power, we sold the FP green and picked up a ETS rotated turbo kit and a Precision 6870. Then I ran into some issues. It was a used, rebuilt 6870, and the turbo was no good when I got it, and I paid a pretty high price for it. So sent that off to Precision to be rebuilt, and in the meantime, I picked up a 6262 to run on the car, and that turbocharger made 670 wheel horsepower. And again, I can't remember the torque value on that one. Finally ended up buying a brand new Precision 6870 with the V-band in out, and it's the T3 size V-band that fits the ETS rotated turbo kit. It's got the 105 AR turbine housing on it, so breathes plenty of air. And with that on the stock Type RA motor that was in this car, we were able to make 813 wheel horsepower, and that was with the factory intake manifold. So the intake manifold really ended up being our choke point on that turbo setup, and we got our hands on a brand new Process West Street Series intake manifold. We put that on the car, made a couple passes, we're dialing it in. And at about, I think it was about 43 or 44 pounds of boost on a stock motor, it broke a rod. And it did so in a pretty incredible fashion. So I'm going to spin the camera around here and let you guys see what the old motor looks like. So excuse the mess in the garage. I have not really organized or cleaned up after doing this work recently. But here's the hole in the top of the stock Type RA motor that rod made. So it obviously annihilated the piston, the rod, the crank, the block. I mean, I wish I had grabbed a flashlight. You can see right through the block there. It's a massive hole. For reference, I mean, I've got pretty good sized man hands. There's my hand. So, you know, otherwise this motor, the other pistons, the other cylinders and everything, they actually looked pretty good. For the abuse that we had given this motor, it held up pretty well. If anybody's curious, we made over 500 horsepower on a stock Type RA with multiple turbocharger systems, pushed it up over 800 horsepower, likely getting close to that 900 wheel horsepower mark with the Process West manifold at 44 PSI on the 6870 turbo. We also upped our fuel system from the ID 1700s to ID 2600s, which they're a little overkill, but it's what I could get, and it's what my tuner wants to use as the injector dynamics. So that's what we went with, and they've been a really good fuel injector. So when this motor broke, I decided to just go all in, and I'll give you a little list. This isn't obviously a complete list, but bought a motor from Outfront Motorsports, decided to opt for a complete long block, actually, this time, instead of just buying a short block from them. A couple reasons why. I won't really elaborate right now, but went with the long block. The short block itself is the Outfront Motorsports V4 Racer Plus. So what that is, it is their V4 closed deck short block case halves. So those are the brand new OEM Subaru case halves that they do their V4 closed deck inserts on. It has a Cali's billet crank, which has dedicated oiling to each main bearing and rod bearing. So it's a little bit better than the factory crank in that regard. We've got Manley tri-beam rods. We've got King race bearings in there. Got the custom JE pistons from Outfront Motorsports with the lateral gas ports. I mean, you can't get a better bottom end than what is in this Subaru. I mean, that's as good as it gets. It's got pinned mains as well. So when we really get up into those high boost levels, hopefully it'll keep the block from distorting too much. Then the cylinder heads are a N25 S20 casting. So they're the same heads that would have come on the Type RA. I've got another set right there that actually survived the broken rod incident pretty well. Those heads have the Farah competition valves and valve seats. They're the oversized valves. They're plus 1 millimeter, so they're a 37 millimeter intake and a 33 millimeter exhaust. Running a GSC dual conical spring, valve spring with a 94-pound spring seat pressure. Kind of handle all the boost we're going to throw at this thing. Then we've got BC 280 cams. They're not the biggest cams. They've got a pretty long duration. They don't have a ton of lift compared to some of the other cams like a GSC Stage 3. But from the guys that I've talked to who do these cars all the time, do them every day, those Stage 3 cams are really aggressive. And unless you're running like a 72 millimeter turbo, they're actually a little bit too big for this application. The 6870 turbo, even though it's massive by a lot of standards, it would be a little undersized. So anyway, we did that. Those are the heads that are on there. We've got the ARP half-inch head studs, of course. It's got ARP case bolts on the short block. And again, everything else is pretty much the same. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up for you guys. We've been driving it around, getting our break-in miles. I think we're at about 250 miles right now. It's third oil change. Running the Motul 1040 break-in oil on this for the first 500 miles. Then we'll switch over to the Motul, just the 540 8100 XS motor oil. It's good for running ethanol. So that's all we run in this car is ethanol. This tune is still the tune from the Type RA motor. So the compression ratio between the two is almost spot on. The cams are really the major difference. So you'll kind of hear that in the idle, and that's a combination of this not being tuned for the cams. On that note, we did keep the dual AVCS system in this car for tuning purposes to help kind of keep it more streetable. But we'll fire this thing up for you guys here. Sorry, I'm trying to do this video in a single take, so I don't have to do a whole bunch of editing, and I'm not a vlogger or a videographer or anything like that. So I apologize if I kind of lose train of thought or ramble on here. So we are going to get the car tuned here pretty soon. Again, I'm going to start it up, but the idle is a little different. It wants to hunt around quite a bit. So let's go ahead and we'll fire this thing up. Oh, we're running the brand new, just released this year, the ACT Mod Twin XT Sprung Hub Organic Disc Clutch. That's a mouthful, but this clutch is rated for 875 foot-pounds of torque, which we're not going to get out of this four-cylinder. We'll probably get close to 800, but this guy's going to hold up great. The clutch pedal feel is super light. I think it's lighter than OEM. It's buttery smooth. So far I've been really happy with it. Also, we put in a brand new AEM, I think they're the X series gauges. They're actually good for hooking up to a standalone ECU. That's one of the issues right now. We're still running the Cobb access port. So with the recent changes to the Cobb software, we're not able to make any changes to the tune using Cobb anymore. So I have an EcuTech, I think it's called Race ROM tuner, but that's a complete change from the Cobb system. So we're gonna wait till we get to the dyno to be able to make any adjustments. But our gauges here, we've got our oil pressure, which is a necessity in my opinion, and then we also have our oil temperature. So all right, here we go. Single take. Ignore how messy the garage is. So one of the things I did too is I converted all my vacuum slash boost lines over to AM fittings. I was running a combination of just hose barbs and press connect fittings, like a press to lock. But I converted, you can see here, everything now is really nice, vibrant AM fittings. The car's absolutely filthy. We've been driving it in the rain, which I normally would never do. Trying to keep this car semi-show quality, or at least show capable. Not trying to win any awards, but I like this car to be pretty spotless. And it's filthy right now. So there's a couple things I still need to do. Everything's pretty much buttoned up on this car. Like I said, we've been driving it, doing our break-in miles. Everything's good. So here's some messy stuff. This is hideous. Normally I would never do this, but I wanted to run both fuel pumps 100% of the time. However, our tune is not set up like that. It's meant to run the pump number one is, they're both Walboro 450s, but it runs a single pump until you hit about 12 PSI of boost, and then there's a Hobbs switch that closes and starts running the second pump that's direct wired to the battery. So I tried to do that and run both pumps at idle, but I could not get my fuel pressure regulator to bring pressure down where I needed it. I really couldn't get it below 50 PSI. So don't want to end up with any cylinder wash or anything on this. So this is me hooking up my Hobbs switch temporarily so that we can play around, get into a little bit of boost. We're not doing anything that's wide open throttle, obviously, but still want to have some fun with the car. And So other than this messy wiring here for the Hobbs switch, which we're going to get rid of, as soon as I get this on the dyno and we start tuning with the EcuTech and we get some baseline stuff going, I'll set up both pumps to run 100% of the time, and you won't have any of this messy wiring here. It'll be all cleaned up. The other thing we're going to change, we're still rocking the classic Cobb 3-port boost controller. Like I said, it's got all AN fittings on here now from Vibrance. This is really nice. Wastegate, obviously, same thing. But I've got a 4-port boost controller, which will allow us to run lighter springs in the wastegate. So these were a 21 pounds worth of spring, which was really about 24 pounds of boost on wastegate only. That's how we were able to make that kind of horsepower and that kind of boost with a 3-port. And I dropped my springs back down to 15 pounds, which in my experience with this setup is actually about 18 pounds of boost on wastegate only. And we're going to have to run a 4-port boost controller so we can control not only the bottom of the gate, but also the top of the gate, which will allow us to reach the boost levels we need to. So my goal with this car, really like to get to that 1,000 horsepower number on the dyno. Not sure we're going to hit it on our first dyno session. I think we're going to get pretty close, but it is going to be July in Tennessee. It's going to be very warm. And we're still rocking the 3.5-inch core ETS front mount intercooler. I'd like to upgrade this to a 5-inch core eventually. So there's still a lot of little things I'd like to do with the car. Obviously, it's always going to be somewhat of a work in progress. But right now, the setup is, in my opinion, this is a phenomenal street car. Once we get this dialed in, like I said, we're going to be able to get really close to that 1,000 horsepower number, probably around, I would say, 45 pounds of boost maybe. Now, this motor is rated for 1,100 horsepower plus, 1,100 and up. Like I said, it's pretty much the baddest of the bad that you can build. But you're talking 250 plus horsepower per cylinder to reach that. And your reliability threshold is really about 100 horsepower per cylinder. So these motors are really good at handling 32 to 36 pounds of boost on a pretty regular basis. From what I understand in my limited experience with this car, the mid-30s is really a sweet spot for these, and they will last a very long time at 32 to 34 pounds of boost. So that'll be our street map with ethanol and this motor being able to rev it up to 8,000 RPMs. That's going to be probably around 750 wheel horsepower, which is plenty to hurt the feelings of just about anybody out on the street in their own sports car. So, and when we go to the track, or if we really want to have some fun, we'll have the ability to turn it up to that 1,000 wheel horsepower number. So that's our end goal. I am not going to go with a bigger turbo. The 6870 is pretty much the biggest turbo that you can fit in this location with this setup. The next step is a fully custom setup where the turbocharger mounts over here and you have a fender exit with no exhaust. And that's not something I'm interested in doing with this car. We're going to be able to make plenty of power with this. We're going to be in a good power band for it to still be a good street car. So overall, it's been a lot of fun. Again, I apologize for rambling on in this video, but I wanted to give everybody an update on the progress of the car and what we've been working on. So stay tuned. There'll be more to come. Hopefully the next videos will be us cruising around a little bit in this. And then, of course, I'll get some good video content when we take this over to tailored tuning and really turn it up. So stay tuned.